Hey, greetings. Today I want to talk to you specifically about chapter 5 of Proverbs, just a little bit of the time that I spent in there and what it meant to me. I'll just share a little bit of that with you. It's so awesome to read Proverbs and just get so much of God's wisdom for us. And in chapter 5, we get into the temptation and the consequences of sex sin, and specifically the negative consequences of associating with an adulterous woman. What I really like the way God starts out in chapter 5 is that he gives us the wisdom and the specific advice on how to avoid the sin even before the sin and the sin consequences are delivered. So even more good news, you can actually take the vaccine before you get the sin on you. So today's times, we're with the vaccine that's out there for COVID-19. There's just a lot of controversy and talk. And look, I'm probably going to be wise enough, at least at this very moment, not to give you any advice on whether you should or should not take the vaccine when it's offered to you. I suggest that you study and make a good decision for yourself. But I will say this, that chapter 5, God's vaccine for sin, in Proverbs 5 verses 1 through 4, just listen to this. My son, pay attention to my wisdom, turn your ear to my words of insight, that you may maintain discretion and your lips may preserve knowledge. For the lips of the adulterous woman drip with honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. So we can see the focus is on the lure of the sin, specifically associating with an immoral, adulterous woman. And so ladies, girls, the same is true for a woman associating with an immoral man. So verses 3 through 6, adultery is specifically mentioned, but I think we can all see that all infidelity appears to be implied. So it's just pretty cool that God says, hey, pay attention, listen to me, and avoid this situation even before that temptation hits. So our God, he is the father of all things, and he's the father of psychology. He gave us wisdom, his wisdom and his words throughout the Bible. And for this chapter, again, pay attention to my wisdom. Turn your ear to my insight so you can maintain discretion and preserve knowledge. So why did God drop this bit of advice on us? Well, in this particular case, the lips of the adulterous woman drip with honey. Well, a lot of sin drips with honey, and you are what you eat. You're who you hang around with. You're what you read. You're what you watch on TV. You're what you listen to. And God knows this, and it's why he tells us over to pay attention to his wisdom. Elsewhere in the Bible, we see it again and again, to hide his word in our heart, to meditate on his word, to put his word on our walls, to put on the full armor of God. Let's look at verse 23. For the lack of discipline, they will die, led astray by their own great folly. Living to satisfy the pleasures of the flesh is the way to folly and eventual moral corruption. Think about this analogy. There are drugs that are more addictive than other drugs, that are more harmful than others. So is true with sin. While all sin is harmful to us, I think the Bible is pretty clear that some are more harmful to us than others. So why does God put so much time in his word warning us about sex sin? Again, he knows what will harm our souls, hearts, families, minds, and bodies the most. God spent a lot of time on sex sin in the Bible. Hey, look, this wasn't a big theological deep dive, but just a very quick Google search. It's what I came up with. I didn't deep dive it, but the first thing that popped up, I just Googled, how many Bible verses address murder? And then I also Googled, how many Bible verses address sex sin? The score was murder 63, sex sin 67. Just chew on that for a minute. Probably a good guess that many of us have fallen to sex sin at some point in life. If you have and have been forgiven, then be forgiven and have joy. If not, repent. God's desire for those who come to him is that our joy would be complete, that our cup will be full, and our cup would run over. He knows what is good for our mind in order for our joy to be complete. He put more emphasis on the dangers of sex sin than on murder. God knows that that sin will take away our joy, that it will allow us to tumble in our witness and destroy our lives and those around us. Again, Proverbs 5, verse 21. For your ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths. For lack of discipline they will die, led astray by their own great folly. Be disciplined. But don't despair. The God of peace will rescue us from any and all temptation when we genuinely seek him and ask him to deliver us. We can get the vaccine before the sin gets on us. Romans 16:19 says this, that the God of peace will crush Satan underneath our feet. The same God of peace is the father of psychology, and he knows we are weak. He knows we are weak to sexual temptation, or he wouldn't have mentioned it so much in the Bible. What is the song? We are weak, but he is strong. Just claim Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. We can't always do it, but he always can. Yes, God does know when we will and when we will not fall to temptation. But he does not will our decisions to sin. Those belong to us. He has told us over and over and over to call on him. Why? Because he knows what behaviors will bring us true joy, what makes our cups run over, regardless of our circumstances. Hear God's message in Proverbs 5. Pay attention to my wisdom. Turn your ear to my insight so you can maintain discretion and preserve knowledge. God is screaming to us, save yourself. Sex drips of honey. Let's turn our ears to the wisdom and insight God gives us so we can maintain discretion. If need be, run, flee to him, be delivered, and have the complete joy he wants for each of us who follow him.